Bucks School District for about 15 years now.
Hi everybody, I'm Lindsay Smith. I'm the Supervisor of Technology for Central Bucks, and this is my 4th year in the role, my 12th year with the district. And like many behind me, I've kind of worked my way up from being a teacher to then working on designing our elementary Quest program, which is our STEM curriculum at elementary. I did that, and I evolved into an administrator role here. And I see my piece of the puzzle really being the marketing. So being from the classroom and the technology department, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that communication piece and how we communicate technology and then transfer it into the classroom and vice versa. So I feel like you're going to hear a lot about how you market it. So even from the tasty cakes to the infographics that we're going to share with you, all of that is a huge piece as we roll out this vision with our district.
It's tight for 4 people back here. It's probably the first presentation you see with 4 people. We're actually going to start with Lindsay first. She's going to do an interactive activity, and we're hoping if you have a phone, iPad device, any kind of device, if you just go to joinpd.com. I'll have you explain what we're doing.
Yeah, in the app, you could see that we have a link to our bit.ly, which is basically just a view-only OneDrive links with some of the documents that we're going to refer to. So you're going to see them up here, but some of them we won't be able to dive deeply into. So if there's anything that you want to refer to as we go on or take back to your own districts, please do so. I also threw a copy of the PowerPoint in there, so if you want to follow along. But I also want to I'm going to break away from this PowerPoint for a moment. How many of you are Microsoft users in the room? Just out of curiosity. Okay, so if you're Microsoft users, we were super excited this year when Pear Deck was adopted into the Microsoft platform or as an integration. And so we're trying it out. This is actually our first time. We did one yesterday and we're doing one today with an activity in our presentation. The one thing you have to do as a Microsoft user is you do have to break away from full PowerPoint and go into the web. So that's what we're going to do right now. And if you would go to joinpd.com on any device that you're using, the code is PSGHN, and some of you are joining. It's going to ask you how you feel, which is really cool because Pear Deck likes to gauge the social emotional wellness of the group, so we hope you're all happy today. And what I'm going to do is this, are you all getting in okay? Anybody just raise your hand? We have lots of technical help if you need it. But what we would like you to start doing, I see some of you figured out the flag, but we'd like to see where you're representing. You have, obviously with the Tasty Cakes, we're representing the east side of the state, but it's just fun to kind of see who's in the room here. And it's always fun in what sessions people don't know where they're living because they like are on the outside of the map. And we have some people from, I think even, do we have any New Yorkers in the room? Maybe some Ohio's? Awesome.
This is your first question. Where is Erie?
Sorry?
Erie, Pennsylvania?
Oh, Erie, right up there at the top. There it is.
Oh.
Yeah. Awesome. So I also am going to just lock the screens, not because I don't want you to participate, but I can lock it just to show you one of the features here. I'm going to take you on to our next slide so we can also figure out who is in the room. If you would, in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, you should see multiple choice questions where it says show answers, and you can start to click on your responses. So administrators, we have a lot of administrators in the room, some classroom teachers, some coaches, some others, which we always like to figure out what that other one is, but who's an other? Anybody? What's your role, sir? Tech director? Okay. Any other tech directors in the room? Or what's your role in the back, ma'am? Okay. Well, thank you. I think we're hoping that this presentation will cater to all your needs and hopefully just give you some insight into all of your roles. And this last one is a little bit more complicated, but it's a X and Y axis, and we're really kind of figuring out here who, on the left-hand side, if you do not have a tech vision, and you do have one, and then if you look on the Y-axis here, we have you know where you are in your plan or you're not sure. So you should start falling into one of those 4 quadrants. And it looks like we're all over the place. That's good. We can relate to all of those because we've been to every single one of them. All right, so that's awesome, and thank you for sharing that. And the last one I want to do is it says hi because we were testing it, but we would like for you to see, we're going to leave this one up as we present. So I'm going to be kind of watching that as we go through the presentation to see if you have any questions. So I'll leave this up on the Pear Deck, and then we'll refer back to it. As Jason had mentioned, we're going to leave some time for questions. So feel free to keep this up on your phone and just jot anything in there that you want us to maybe talk about as we go. All right, so I'm going to turn this back over to our team. And
All right, well, thank you. So we're all going to speak for about 10 minutes in case you're gauging how much time you have to listen to each one of us. Hopefully you'll like us all equally, but about 10 minutes each for our part. The biggest thing that I want to emphasize right now from what I just saw from your quadrant is that we didn't have a plan in the beginning, and now we have a clear path, and it really, really helps when you have a plan. But it helps when you have a plan with the assistant superintendent, technical people, educators, principals, and the community. A tech director can't do this alone to change a district. I will say we have, I know in Pennsylvania we're large, and I have the fortunate opportunity to travel around the country, and we're not large in Central Bucks compared to other districts. A quick funny story, we have 18,000 students, and I sat in a meeting last year with large districts, and I was the smallest one in there, but I went first in the round table, and I said Central Bucks 18,000 students. I was sitting next to Fulton County, Georgia, with 170,000 students. Then New York City was in there with 1 million students, and then Chicago, et cetera, et cetera. And I said, can I redo my answer? We're a small district. So I always look at us as a large district, but we're really not. And I know Pennsylvania has lots of different sizes, but my point of this is it's hard to steer a big ship with lots of people and move something, and we were able to do this with a lot of people. So our demographics are 23 buildings. We have 15 elementary, 5 middle, 3 high schools. We have 18,077 students, and we have 2,700 staff members, which again is big for Pennsylvania, but we know it's small compared to the rest of the country. We're the 3rd largest right now in Pennsylvania, and our location is that star. We're in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, which is near Doylestown. That's the biggest city, biggest town that our district encompasses. We were all over the place, and we knew we needed a plan. And I just wanted to show you sort of my road to getting to where I am today. My first year in Central Bucks was 1994. I taught 5th grade at Butler Elementary School, which is in a town called Chalfont, and this was the computer I had in my classroom. And similar to the keynote, I believe that was yesterday, where you showed Odell Lake and Oregon Trail, we had all those games, and that was like a really great opportunity for our students, but it just wasn't what it's like today. In 1998, that was the first year I was able to email parents in our district, but we were only able to email parents after we begged to email outside of the district, because we were only able to email internally in the beginning. And then we kept saying to our principals, like, why can't we email anyone outside of Central Bucks? Like, it would just make our life easier. And finally, at the time, the tech director allowed us to email humans, because it was very dangerous at the time, because you don't know what would happen if you email outside of the Central Bucks walls. In 2001, Nadine was actually one of my principals at the time at a large elementary school, and they had bought five of these cameras. And you had to sign it out. We were able to take 5 fuzzy pictures with this camera, and then take the floppy disk, print it, and the kids thought it was like the greatest thing. But people would fight for the cameras. We wouldn't always have access to them. It was just not a great plan, but it was an expensive plan that worked for that time. 2005, if you didn't realize this, is when YouTube was invented. We weren't allowed to use it at school because it was dangerous also to use YouTube in 2005, or some people still think it's dangerous today for students, but through our road to where we are today, we now have YouTube as just a regular thing we use with our class, but in 2005, our teachers would have never logged into YouTube. It just wouldn't have been an opportunity for them. 2016 was when things started to change. We bought our first iPad, but we still didn't have a plan or a vision. We just sort of had lots of things in lots of places. So over the years, our schools sort of looked like this in 2017. We had carts, laptop carts, that kids would wheel down the hall and bang into doors, usually break a door once a year, break a cart once a year. We bought better carts, but they were too heavy for 1st graders to push. And one kid hurt his toe. It was just like a lot of things with the carts moving around the rooms. We had presentation stations like this in every room that were projected onto a smartboard, but they weren't great either because, again, kids would bump them and you had to recalibrate the smartboard, and the speakers would fall off. Sometimes the speakers would break. The desktops wouldn't always work, and it was just like a mess. And some schools would mount the projectors. Some schools would mount the projectors in laundry baskets because the physics teachers were always smart enough to figure out how to do it themselves, and we just didn't really have a consistent plan. We also had wireless spotting. Some schools had HP, some schools had Cisco. We didn't have the same switches everywhere. It wasn't really a clear path of where we needed to be. It didn't work consistently around the district. Some rooms had iPads. This would be an elementary room in 2016 or 17, and they did have iPads, but it wasn't, again, a plan in 2017. So what we needed was a roadmap, and that's what we're here to talk about today. And we knew where we wanted to be. We wanted to have the goal of utilizing educational technology and digital tools to expand access to the curriculum. We just had to figure out how to get there. And the quick story for us is that we used a website called FutureReady.org. We used the Future Ready framework, and we personalized it for Central Bucks. And Future Ready was really good for us because it helped us get a plan of how to be structured and how to be organized by using tools that are needed in today's world. So in summary, Future Ready is designed to set up a roadmap to achieve success and to commit districts towards a shared vision. And the word shared is the most important part of this, because if you're a tech director, You might have a vision if you're a superintendent. You also might have a vision if you're a school board member. You also have a vision. I've realized, and if you're a director, you would know this, the most important vision is your business manager or your finance person, because they also have a vision of saving money. So you need to have everyone on the same page, because if you're not on the same page, you're not going to have forward progress anywhere. But the Future Ready framework helped us, because we put our tech director on, which was me, we put our supervisors on, we put our principals on these committees, we put our finance person, and they all had a different gear. And the gears of Future Ready, which is what you have in front of you, the tasty cakes. At the time, we had different gears on each tasty cake, which you'll learn more about. And we had 7 groups, one for curriculum, one for space and time, one for infrastructure, data and privacy, community partnerships, budget and resources, and then professional learning. But what we did was we took the center of the Future Ready framework and put CB on it. We sort of made it our own. We went to some of their sessions, went through their websites, and then sort of personalized the 7 gears of Future Ready to Central Bucks' needs. And then what we decided as a big level here is we needed these 4 things to get to our end route. We needed reliable infrastructure, we needed professional development, we needed to maximize our eye for the future with the right tools, and we needed to provide creative options for our teachers. We sort of knew this before our first meeting. So if you were our Future Ready team, we would sit in a meeting just like this and say, this is where we're trying to get. You're all going to be in a different gear. We have 7 leaders today for your gear. We have the next year to sort of figure this out as a team. So what we did was we took those 7 gears, and we knew that we needed a variety of viewpoints represented. We had to make sure we included elementary, middle, and high school. We also had to include teacher, principals, and the district level. And I'll be really honest with you, like today, I'm very confident where we are. We have lots of good information to share. But I was nervous. I was very nervous when I had to do this, because the superintendent at the time we will hear about today was new. He said, "What's the vision for Central Bucks?" I said, that's a great question. And we just went back and forth, and he said, "You need a vision by the end of this year." And I didn't know how this was going to come together, but with these people and these different groups of people all in one room, and the array of people working together allowed us to make a good vision, and we're all really, really excited about this. And I just highlighted some colors for you, the key people, because if you don't have a school board member or the union president or manager of informational technology services, they're not all informed. And the biggest thing we learned through this process is misinformation leads to failure, and keeping everyone informed leads to success. You just have to keep meeting with people, keep communicating with people, making sure everyone is on the same page. This is what one of our meetings looked like, the first meeting, which was November 10th, 2017, and these people are meeting with their gear groups, and we give them very specific tasks. We have a timer on the top, you have 20 minutes to discuss, and each group would have a leader that would present out to a larger group and get feedback, and we would go back and forth with different ideas. And if you had like the infrastructure one, if you were into that gear, you would come up with some recommendations. Central Bucks over the next 5 years should have access points that are the same across the board, and switching that should be updated, for example. And then the finance manager might say, how much is that going to cost? It's a good question. And we talk about E-rate, and we go back and forth until we had a plan that was good to put on paper for a draft. Through this year of processing doing this, we visited many districts across the country, both like virtually as well as in person, and people were very excited to share their story. But one of the key things I would recommend to this group, if you're looking to do this, is to attend a Future Ready Institute. They have them all over the country. You can go for one day, or you can go for a couple of nights. But the first one we went to was in Boston. We took the train to Boston for 2 days and saw Tom Murray was there for that one, and he was leading that. And one of the keynotes we've had at one point was Jimmy Casas, and it's not a technical training as much as it is about leadership and moving your district forward. The other thing I want to point out in this is that you need to have Future Ready meetings in your own district. So whatever you learn in these smaller things that are off-site, you have to bring back as the leader to your district and sort of mimic the same process so you can have people following your lead. More things we did in the first year that I want to point out is that we had to do vision document reviews all the time. So we had, we use Word, but if you Google Docs, doesn't matter. We just had a shared document. People were constantly adding from April to June until the superintendent saw the final document. Once the superintendent saw this and the board had actually voted on this, we then shared it with the entire district for feedback. So every teacher in Central Bucks, all 2,000 teachers, were able to give us feedback through surveys saying this is not going to work or this is going to work. There was really no surprises by the time we were going to roll this out the following year. Overall, what we had to come up with was a statement, and we recommend you do this as well. So if you have a statement, everything else falls into this. So everything you're going to hear about today ties into our vision statement, which I'll read to you. The Central Bucks School District is committed to utilizing educational technology and digital tools that expand access to the curriculum and promote personalized learning. We prepare students for their future by utilizing a variety of instructional practices and tools that support higher order thinking. And I'm reading this sort of laughing because looking at this in this room, you probably say, like, great, that's a statement, but we probably argued about different words on this for like days and weeks until we had this great statement, because if we didn't have the foundation for this is like our goal, our objective, nothing else would come to place. And in my office, we would say the word should be utilized, whatever, and we would just go back and forth until we had this done, and eventually we came up with a statement that we still stick with. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Garvin, to Nadine, and remember, if you have questions, you can post them on Pear Deck right now or write them down. We are going to have time at the end to take questions, but we're going to now turn into the portion of implementing our process.
So Jason described to you the process we used after attending all the Future Ready workshops, but something that we tend to do in CB is really bring it back and then work through the process and then figure out how to CBize it. We often use that term to make it work best for us. And really we had to think about things not just related to the technology vision and the statements, but that process we had to use across all departments so that it supported teaching and learning. And we use that through access, resources, and opportunities across quite a few areas. Really the vision for even starting the Future Ready process started with the vision behind the vision, which was our new superintendent at the time, Dr. Kopicki. He came in and he really wanted us to do the Future Ready training, but then also consider a series of prompts with all of those stakeholder groups that had us start to evaluate the strengths in each of our areas. We also had to look at what goals and opportunity areas existed for us. And then most importantly, we had to define what our future success was, meaning how will we know when our students are successful? How will we know that this vision and all these great words that we talked about and argued over and really thought about, what will be our measures of success? How will we define it and what does it look like? Again, we involved everybody we could. Everybody in the classroom, support staff, professional staff, everybody sat at tables. We did chart papers all over the entire school district, 23 schools, the board room, parent committee meetings, parent council meetings, student council meetings, where all voices were heard, and we took care of answering those questions from all stakeholders. We had to look at it at 1 year, 3 years, and 5 years, so that we had to have these measurable benchmark areas. What do we think we can accomplish in a year? What is our goal for 3 years? And then finally, where do we want to be at the end of this 5-year vision? And I will tell you that we are in year 3 of our vision, and we're still fine-tuning it. When I talked to you about the process that we went to, our original document when going through this whole thing was 40 pages long. Nobody can walk and talk 40 pages in detail. And so while we had this great document that we put together, and we had all these measurable outcomes and all the ways to define our success, everybody might have been talking about a different thing. And so some of the things got lost in the shuffle. And so we needed to refine the document and make it more livable, make it more walkable. And so even each year, that then came down to the booklet that you're seeing now, which is really our annual celebration summary. There's a couple samples of the book that we put out every year to say, here's where we are and here's where we're going in terms of progress. But it's no longer the 40-page document of just goals and objectives. We took all of those 1, 3, and 5-year items, put them in, collated them, rank ordered them, and then finally almost did kind of a qualitative and quantitative study where we then summarized them and created themes around them. That's how we established then really what our definition of a graduate is, as well as how we were going to kind of package it for everybody to understand what our mission really was going to be about. So I'm sure all of your districts have something similar to this, which is your portrait of a graduate. Somewhere you hopefully have established what it is that you have your kids learn and achieve and demonstrate as they walk out the doors of your schools. So by the time they graduate, these were the things that we had established were necessary for us to feel like our students would be successful in the real world. We needed to incorporate that into all of our departments because it's all interdependent and interconnected. And so what we did was create really a graphic organizer that summarized all the work that we were doing. We have the technology pillar. We needed something for community connections because we are 122 square miles, and so there are a lot of people who need to understand where their tax money is going and what's happening and what their kids are doing. Many of the people in Central Bucks graduate and return to our community, so they have a very strong investment in the community. They want to know what we're doing, and they have high expectations for us to be successful. We had finance and we had facilities, and then we intentionally put our teaching and learning in the middle because we believe that all of this is to support, obviously, our ultimate goal, which is to produce successful students. We took each of the pillars and we then had to create a document to support them. You'll see that they all ended up with their own color. They all ended up looking the same, even though the contents of each of the pillars is very different and specific to each of the different departments. If we zoom in on the technology one, you will see that each one had an overarching statement related to the pillar. They all have then a goal statement, objectives related to the goal statements in however many areas that pillar has a goal statement. And then the item that changes each year and is updated and reflected upon each year for our annual document are the current year strategic initiatives. That's the work that we intend to get done in that given year. So in theory, in our minds, this document stays the same for the most part, except for that one area, which is this year's work. So that any decision we make, any question we get, when you know all new things are flying in at you at rapid fire pace every single day, we can always come back to a yes or no related to the vision. If you look a little closer at technology, which is why we're here today, you will see that we separated it into 5 focus areas: instructional tools, infrastructure, technical support, policies and procedures, and then budget and resources. And then again, just like those colored documents, for each of those, there was then an overall stated goal, a measurable outcome, and then each of those benchmark years and those initiatives that are listed in the colored documents that I just shared. Again, the 5 areas: instructional tools, infrastructure, tech support, policies and procedures, and budget and resources. One thing I will tell you is that Dr. Kopicki will constantly reflect on the work that the IT department has done with this. He will always say to everyone when we come back and revisit the vision, and we do this multiple times during the year, but always at the end of the year to do our progress achieved and what we still need to work on and set those new initiatives. But Jason's team really does the best job at this because he, in his department, has all of these blown up poster size. They have sticker charts that when every one of these things is met, they mark them. They're constantly, always, they set kind of the model for all of us and how we would proceed with implementing all of our vision documents. So while he started this when we were in the 40 pages to kind of keep the language at the forefront of everything his department was doing, it really became the model for all of the other pillars to make sure that that language was constantly in front of people and that we were always looking at, were we meeting the success standards? So how do you go about, in a district our size, or any size really, walking the talk? We started to look at how are ways that we can put the information out there for everybody. Everyone that we see, talk to, everyone who's walking the mission, how is it that they understand what it is that we're doing? So we started to include them in all of our meeting agendas, and this is just kind of a snapshot of an elementary principals meeting. So one of my meetings, we started to build our agendas and cross-reference it to what pillar we were really talking about in each of the agendas. We started to launch our website all around using the graphic organizer and talking about the vision work, and the booklets were all made into PDFs that everybody had access to, and they were referenced every time we were anywhere or doing anything. In any of our presentations, you will see us reference one of the pillar documents, bring up and zoom in on which specific initiative or goal or objective we're using. So again, everybody kind of has that laser focus as this is the why, and this is what we're going to accomplish as a result of this. And then finally, the pieces that we're sharing with you today, we put them out in every kind of communication that we can. So that, you know, we always talk about that rule of at least 3 touches, that you can send an email, you can send a paper document, you can put it out on the website, but you constantly have to keep revisiting these things and putting them in front of everybody. So if nobody walks away with a 20-page or a 40-page or a poster-sized document of the vision, they still might have just this little handout that says, this is what we're about, this is our focus, and this is what we're doing. So that was kind of the bird's eye view of how the entire vision was put together. But really now Laurel's going to talk to you about really how they implemented it at the technology level for the technology pillar in our IT department.
Hello everyone. I just wanted to, for this portion of the presentation, take a few moments to talk to you about how valuable and important it's been in my role in the technology department to have a tech vision to focus on in responding to everyday issues that come up and also for long-term planning. It really helps guide all department members in our responses and how we plan to our projects that we're going to work on. So just a few years back in our department, where we were, the conversations and topics that we were having we were talking about on-premise server solutions. We had siloed data systems. We were reacting. It felt like we're always responding to problems that we're having. IT was not consulted when purchasing technology decisions were made. Thus, that resulted in a lot of custom programming and a lot of setup time and costs. And a lot of the technology decisions were teacher-centric. So a couple teachers wanted this technology tool, so we tried to support their needs. And so, because we were always like focusing on what they wanted. We had a lot of consultants to make all this work. And we also had like the device software installations that we're always contending with. So the reason why I laid this out in a circle is it felt like in our department we were always moving in circles, putting out fires. And this resulted in a lot of time and a lot of money on our department's part. So the conversations that we're having today, because we have a technology vision in place, is we're talking about cloud-based systems. We're talking about data visualization. We're talking about interoperability. IT is part of the discussion now when purchasing decisions are made for systems. Everything is learner-centric. What's best for our students in our district for technology. Security and data protection, they're all common themes that we have. Our software is a lot of times very collaborative in nature. It has blended administration amongst different departments. Everything's browser and web-based. We moved away from a lot of those software installations. And I feel that we're able to be more proactive and forward-thinking because we have a vision in place. So again, when we talk about cloud-based systems, so that was one of our goals in infrastructure, to replace our technology and move towards the future. So cloud is definitely something that's a common theme out there. So that is one of our outcomes listed in our vision. And then we looked at it at the end of year 1, year 3, and year 5 with where we are and what we wanted our goals to be. Again, with data visualization, we knew that that was important to us. We talked about in our policies and procedures about how we wanted to make district data a lot more available to our users. We had no system in place, so that came out when we were building our vision. So again, we're at the end of year 3, and we have just selected a tool that we're going to use in our district based on all of our current systems and that we have in place. And again, I can't emphasize that technology vision, that pillar 2 in our district's overall vision, has allowed us to move forward with district-wide initiatives in a very planned approach. It's not reactive, it's not rushed, it's very well thought out. And so it just makes your department so much more successful when you're able to work with that guiding vision, always supporting us. So what have we done because of specific outcomes that we've planned listed in our vision is we've completed a complete infrastructure assessment. We continue to evaluate moving our major systems to the cloud. We have selected the most efficient device in our district based on mobility for our students and teachers. We have set internal standards for new system selections when we make them. We have a data privacy agreement that we provide to our vendors to sign when we're using any cloud-based system that we're sending our data to. We require a single sign-on for all of our systems, and we implemented an LMS. So again, we feel these are all outcomes, very planned approach, and we accomplished all of that, and the vision was very helpful in allowing us to do that. So how did we come up with our goals, our outcomes, what we wanted to do in our visions? So again, Jason mentioned that we built it around the Future Ready framework, but we learned from others. We learned from all the districts surrounding us in the state. We learned from talking to people here, but we also traveled because we're larger in the state. We traveled and wanted to learn from others. So we went to Morrisville, North Carolina, and we were able to visit that school district there, and we really learned from how they marketed their vision, built it on the website, and how all of their stakeholders and staff were aware of that vision in place. We worked virtually with Fulton County, that has like 96,000 students. Again, they talked about how they govern their data and their system interoperability, and we really learned for how they make their selections and how everything is all tied together. We traveled to Baltimore County, Maryland, which has over 100,000 students, and we learned how they branded everything that they were doing. It's called their BCPS1, and that's how they marketed it in their district. So everybody understood what they were doing, and we learned that marketing is important for us. Additionally, we continue to work, learn not only from the Future Ready framework, but we definitely learn a lot when we go to COSIN, ISTE. We participate in a group called the Learning Council. We've learned a lot from them. They have sessions in Philadelphia. And so we continue to learn what those future forward-thinking technologies are and how they're going to work in our district when we build out the specific outcomes in our vision. It allowed us to, gave us thought, me as a technology leader, when I'm trying to explain the cost or time involved in making data magically transfer between systems, it helped when we created this document and we learned from other districts that they had that, and how we can just explain to our district stakeholders how our data is housed, how we govern it, how we send it out. Everything on the left costs a lot of money. We have to pay programming to make the SQL work. Everything on the right goes we use one roster API. That allows the data to just seamlessly move. So very little work on our department. So if we can enforce that their selections are made based on that technology, that really helps us. And having this visual, again, for our district stakeholders was really helpful for our department and for those people to understand. And lastly, one of our initiatives, we keep talking about the cloud. We moved away from all of our network drives this summer for staff, and so everybody's working on their OneDrive. So we realized, again, we had to communicate to be successful. So we created a marketing document that we sent out to all staff, again, always just trying to communicate to everybody what we were doing and how it tied back to our vision. And so what I want to do now is turn the last portion of the presentation over to Lindsay Smith, the Supervisor of Educational Technology, and she's going to talk about marketing.
Thanks, Laura. Thanks, everybody. And again, as I mentioned, a lot of these documents that we're referring to are in that bit.ly link, so it's just bit.ly/CBVision20. And it's also in the link to our P&C app. The link is in there as well, if you forget it. But Laura mentioned the marketing piece of it, and that's what I'm going to be speaking about, because listening to Laurel speak, I can understand what she's saying now, but 4 years ago, I wouldn't. Coming from the classroom, a lot of that didn't really resonate in that verbiage and that language. So I said, it's really important, if we want our 2,000 staff members on board with this vision, we need to sell it in a way that they can comprehend and they can help us, right? So if you see this quote up here, if you don't tell your story, someone else will. And when you're not communicating clearly to your stakeholders, they're going to make up their own stories about what you're doing, or say that there's no vision at all, when we all know that that's not true. So what we are doing as we market our message is, I kind of stuck with the theme of A's here, but we want to make it appealing to our audience, no matter who they are, make it appropriate in the sense of length. Nadine talked about a 40-page document. It's great to have these booklets, but what can we hang in our classroom that does the same thing in a quick glance? How is it applicable? So if you're reading it as a custodian or a teacher or a finance director, whatever it might be, does that apply to you, and can we all be singing and saying the same things? And is it actionable? It's one thing to have your vision posted on your wall, but what am I doing to make sure that I'm helping you live that out as a member of the CB staff? So as we mentioned, we talked about going to Future Ready, and here's a few pictures Jason mentioned. I talked about that, but this was our first road trip. I think Jason and I were even in our jobs for maybe 3 months at this point, and we're hopping on a train to Boston going to write a district vision, and we're like, let's bring tasty cakes. So that's kind of what we did. We think every time we're representing Central Bucks, we have to make it approachable. People came to talk to us. It's silly, but this is what people, we don't give these to our teachers, but this brought people to our table. We could tell our story and hear from other districts. And it got us talking to other districts who were in the same position that we were. We made networking opportunities, but we came back so excited by going to this conference. It gave us the adrenaline we needed to come back to Central Bucks and do this in a very short period of time. So as Jason and everyone behind me had mentioned, we have this document. It looks great, but let's be honest, there's not many people who are going to sift through all those bullets if they don't have to. So what we did was we tried to make it so how could we make this colorful and approachable that we could also use in professional development. So this is an infographic, and a lot of what you're going to see I made on Venngage or Canva, free infographic tools. I purchased the premium editions now because now I'm using it, and we're building better infographics as we go. But you can see the top of this still has the same vision that we have in our document over on the left, which is educational technology expands access to the curriculum, it enhances student learning, and it develops 21st century skills. And when we talk about spending money, why are we doing that? Why, community stakeholders, are we spending your tax dollars on technology? Or teachers, why are we putting this in your classroom? It's because of these 8 things. We were able to take our vision and condense it into 8 major areas that if you think about anything that's happening in the classrooms today in your districts, I'm sure it falls into one of these things. So whether it's staff collaborating with each other or students, whether it's being productive in your own organizational system with email or how you take notes, or creating things with students, whether it be video or iMovie or you name it, gathering data for formative assessment, then creating differentiation for students. But most importantly, how do we make our classrooms and our students and teachers mobile at home and at school, and also make sure that they're accessing those materials. And if you have network drives, that makes access very difficult. So this is why the cloud transformation was so important to us as a district, because we wanted teaching and learning not to just have to happen in the 4 walls of our schools, in our classrooms. And then we tied it back to something that I'm sure all of you can relate to, is some type of model, and there's a lot of them out there. We resonate with SAMR because we realize that there's going to be some lessons that you do with substitution and others you redefine with, but if you're going to go the length of using technology in our classrooms, we want it to have a purpose, and we want it to make sense, and we want it to be able to do things that you couldn't do before, right? And that's redefinition at its finest. So this is just a splash page of some of the resources that I'm going to dive into briefly that represent 2 of our major campaigns. One is the digital transformation that we rolled out last year, and the second is our security campaign that we're rolling out this year. If I zoom in here at this digital transformation, this is a huge undertaking. So you're going to see that we chunked this out into many, many different types of communication for our staff. So this one was really designed more for our administrators and that understand. I'm going to break away from this because I'm more of a pointer. Can you hear me okay? So we have this cloud, and anything in the cloud or above the dotted line is something that we in Central Bucks last year already had in the cloud. Most people don't know what that means. So this wasn't really a great graphic for teachers because they're like, what do you mean these systems are in the cloud, right? But for people that are making financial choices for our district, this is important. And you can see that these 6 systems that are hanging by strings from the cloud last year were not in the cloud. But we had dates alongside of them as how we want to bring those up. So the network drives, which is located right here, by August 1st of last year, we wanted all network drives up in the cloud. And we were communicating this around January. So we were giving ourselves 6 months to do that. And what we then did was we made another graphic which said, okay, we're going to break this up the next 4 months into 4 different phases. And we started with the easiest thing, which for some people may not have been easy, but it was let's just move all of your network files as an individual to the clouds, whether it's Google Drive, in our case it was OneDrive. We broke it up. You're going to clean up your files, you're going to sync them, you're going to move them, and then you're going to stop using your OneDrive, or stop using your iDrive on that day that you do it. And we have, I have the privilege of working with a representative in all 23 buildings. We call them the K-12 Technology Committee. And I meet with those people on a regular basis, but our team will make resources, PowerPoints, these infographics, give them all the scripts, and then they go back to their buildings and have the same faculty meeting presentation, usually 10 minutes or less, but then they help with these phases. So they helped every teacher that needed help with their OneDrive, they got it, and they were there by March 15th in most cases. Phase 2, all right, building principals, we got permissions from Dr. Lukawal and Dr. Garvin to go to the principals meetings and train our principals on Yes, you might be using a OneNote or a website right now to share resources with your staff, but we're all going to set up a building OneDrive, and we're going to do that through Microsoft Teams. So we helped our principals get there and trained them on how to move resources to a central location that all teachers were going to be comfortable using and trained on. Phase 3 was now, how are you going to work with students? Because we get that. Before, you went to this student's shared drive and you could collaborate that way. That's going away. That was a big, scary thing for our teachers to think about. We gave ourselves from March to June to help them identify how they were going to do that. And then lastly, you always have niche groups that fall outside of that. So we worked with other departments like transportation or business or HR separately. We would send our staff to them to help them with the transition. So that's how we went through those different phases. But more specifically, when you're talking about the different phases, we even broke out into saying to teachers, listen, if you are working, or staff, if you're working with one another, all of these things on the left are traditional options that are still there for you. If you are comfortable using a copy machine and hard copies, go for it. That's still in the hallway for you. You can use email if you just want to go back and forth like you always did. Filing cabinets, external hard USBs. What you can't use is iDrives and network drives because they're going away, but don't worry, because what's going to happen is iDrive will be your OneDrive, so you still have your personal files, but in that shared environment of the network, we're just replacing that with Teams. And then we went through and explained all the leverage of tools that you get by using that product. So that was how we went about doing that, and I will tell you right now, every one of our buildings has a building team. When students are enrolled on the first day of school, because we sync this to Infinite Campus, which is our SIS, every teacher rolls in on the first day of the semester or marking period with all of their classes, get an identified team, and within that, all of their students are sunk to that. So there's a lot of things that we're doing for teachers to take those pain points away by automating with our SIS. And then we honed in on specifically thinking, if you're gonna work with students, we know you need to share content, collect content, collaborate. And we had another infographic that kind of explained the other choices. If you're working with students and you're looking for, the goal here is to find the most efficient way to collect things from students and give them things, we were making recommendations. In elementary, we use Teams because it's an LMS-like product. And we also use Seesaw for that back and forth communication of work and with families. Secondary, we already had Canvas up and running as a mandated tool for 7th through 12th grade. And a lot of our staff at secondary is using OneNote because we have digital inking in our secondary one-to-one programs. So we use a lot of digital inking right there in that platform. So again, we just wanted to meet teachers where they were at, give them guidance and best practice and support them along the way while also marketing our vision every step of that way. Moving forward to this year, this was huge, and I will say that I begged if we could have an infographic for this topic because I sat with Laurel and Jason and our network manager Andrew, and we started saying, okay, next up on our vision is security. And I'm like, oh my gosh, teachers are gonna die when they hear this. Like, nobody wants to talk about this with teachers because they don't care, right? At the end of the day, I just want to do what I needed to do, and I wanted to do my work, but we need them to care. We really need them to care, and we need to make it fun. So this was my way of making cybersecurity and data privacy fun in an infographic format. I don't know if people actually think it's fun, but for me it looks way more approachable than, you know, a bulleted email that might come out. But what we did was, we first need to do this. We need to explain to our community that data is really important. And as a teacher, you have a lot of sensitive data at your hands. And as a business department and HR, they kind of know that. But we needed everybody in our group to understand that you have data. When you are using a district email address and a district OneDrive, you are putting data at risk if you're not secure. So that's first step. Second was, we get that we use passwords, but we are now making sure that we have complex passwords. We're also making sure that we're, a lot of email spam like many of you are going through. That's not enough anymore. So what we have to move into is, now we need to increase our security measures. Yes, you have a great password and you use it and you don't share, but guess what? That's still not enough to keep our district data safe. And what we need to do is self-service password reset, SSPR, because we're Microsoft again, and MFA. So these are things that are huge security recommendations for districts. And how we're doing that is we're tying it right back to our vision. Yes, we know it's a pain in the butt for you to have to click on the approve link every time you want to go into the link, but guess what? You're keeping our data safe, and we really thank you for doing that. Lastly, we're going to be going into this. We are still working our way towards this, but we're going to be adapting ClassLink. We're working on rolling that out, and we're calling it MyCVSD. We're branding that, but we want that to be our portal, our hub. If you are going to use a program in Central Bucks, we want it to link with our SIS. We also want it to be One Roster certified. How many of you have heard of One Roster certified or IMS Global? That's great, because a lot of people have not. And I think they're missing the boat on when they come. That's my biggest fear. Is I'm walking through sessions, I'm like, these are awesome. But if you have a teacher sitting in a session and they love that tool, and then they come back to the district and they roll that out, this isn't happening, right? So that standardization needs to happen for this goal of cybersecurity and data privacy to happen at its best. So that's our job as a technology department, to inform our community. It's not Dr. Garden's job to do that. That's our technology goal and our vision, to make sure that as curriculum wants software, we're in front of them saying, hey guys, make sure you invite us to that meeting. We'll let you know if it ties into ClassLink and if it's hitting the standards that it needs to. And if not, you might love the product, but we're not going to be able to give it a stamp of approval to move forward with that at this time. It's not always easy to have that conversation, but it's getting easier because, as Jason and Nadine had mentioned, we get into front of those meetings all the time, selling our vision, and people get it. People are hearing us. Lastly, we always break down, as I mentioned, actionable steps. Not just what are we doing, but again, what can you do to help us? So we've added out-of-district banners. We give them a checklist of all the things that we've done to increase security. But now the next steps are, you need to help us understand why data privacy is so important. Yes, you're going to have to put your cell phone in your district account so that you can give us a secondary form of identification if your account is compromised. How we sell that? You now have ownership of your account. You don't have to call the help desk to get us to or to change your password. You can do it on your own. And we're telling them, you know those password. How many of you have seen cards where all the student passwords are listed and they put them in the front of the homework book at the beginning of the year? That goes against every single sign-on goal that we have, right? The goal is you have an email email address for a student and a staff member, and they have a password, and that's their key to the world, right? That's their key to the kingdom. And that's, again, the gift of time that we're giving back to teachers, but also the gift of security and ensuring that we're keeping our data safe. So, as we had mentioned, we go through a lot of communication and marketing the message. It's one thing to do this, but if you're not out in front of the people selling it, people aren't hearing it. So we go to school board meetings and we're telling this story to school board members in the community. We go to superintendent's advisory meetings where our superintendent invites parents and community members once a month to his office for updates, and we're part of those at times. We go to faculty meetings. Brian Novick, who's actually in the back room, is our K-12 staff developer. Him and I went to every elementary school, which we have 15 of them, and I think it took us a course of a few months to do that. But we got in front of them to sell our technology vision so that they could understand as teachers and as staff where we were headed. Our K-12 technology committee I mentioned, huge. If you don't have this in your district, I don't know what size, I think any size district could benefit from having boots on the ground, selling your vision, and informed people helping you along the way. And then parent informational nights. We send it out to the whole district. Hey, come to this high school on this night from this time to this time, and here where we're at. And people come, and they actually really, really enjoy it. And it really allows us to be the face of that work that they're seeing. How do you measure it, right? So you have a vision, you spend all this time, you have all these sticker charts as we mentioned, but how do you make sure that the vision is actually working? We constantly send out surveys to our students, our staff, our parents, our principals. We ask, how's it going? And I'll tell you, this is a nice survey. Not all of them look this way. Some, we realize we need to pivot on what that goal was, and we need to figure that out and make changes. We also, as Nadine mentioned, the sticker chart. So this is our vision at the end of last year. This is Andrew, who I mentioned. Brian Merrill was actually presenting on Teams down the hall from our district. And three of us here. Sticker charting, and this is green, yellow, red is the progress on where we were on our strategic initiatives. And every department does this, and this is the way that we reflect on our work at the end of every year. But building visits. Number one, as a tech director or whatever role you have as an administrator, get into those schools and see it. Take pictures. Celebrate that work. We are taking pictures and putting them on Twitter, not just to show all of you what we're doing, but you would be amazed at how many teachers with 23 buildings don't even know what the teacher next door is doing, right? So if you aren't able to see and break down those walls for the staff, and build opportunities for celebration, a lot of this vision goes unnoticed and people don't even know that the person next to them is helping to work towards that. So again, it's all a marketing measures that we take. And we also wanted to just, again, thank you for coming, because these opportunities, we, as Jason mentioned, we went to many districts, and Nadine mentioned, and we hope that we can share our stories so that we could be one of the districts that you can refer back to and use our resources, because that's what we do in education, we give back. So please, as I mentioned, we have business cards, we have pamphlets. We want to open this up to conversation as well, but please follow us on Twitter. We really are active as a district. CB J. Jaffe, CBN Garvin, Laurel Petreza, and CB L.I. Smith. We've been actively tweeting this week as well, the PNC hashtag, but thank you all for joining.
Thank you. I promised 45 minutes, so we went over a little. I think the best gift I can always give to people is time. So I think what we're going to do, because there are 4 of us, is we'll stand by the Tasty Cakes and take any questions you have. The 4 of us can handle all the questions, and if you don't have any, we didn't see any posted in the pair deck, so there's none to answer out loud. But I was just saying we could just answer in person. So thank you for coming, and come on up for questions if you want to ask one out loud, or you want to. Yeah. Oh, good.
I'll put that back up. Yeah, so it's awesome.
Does anyone have any major questions you want to ask in front of the group?
Is that go one-to-one with like Chromebooks and iPads, stuff like that?
Yeah, so we're 1-to-1 in grades 7 to 11. That's in part of our plan. You would see next year will be, this 3rd year of our plan will be 7 to 12. We're using HP and Lenovo. We have a hybrid, but we're switching to Lenovo totally. So we have a device for every student.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. I recommend Lenovo. I'll say that. Any other general questions for the group?
The other question I have is, it seems like the transition with your superintendent was a really big factor in how you started to move forward. If that didn't happen, would you see your district in making these transitions like you did, or would you have stayed the same course?
That's a good question. It wouldn't have been as aggressive because it was my first year in a new job for me, and I was going to probably come up with the vision, but it would have been more internally of just our group. We wouldn't have made it as broad as we did using so many stakeholders. So I'm glad the transition happened when it did. All of us have been here for many years in our leadership role. Nadine and I, we have over 24 years each in the district, and Laurel 15 years in the position. So we sort of know what we're doing, but we wouldn't have probably taken the time to bring in so many perspectives if the new superintendent didn't push me. So yeah, that's a really good question. However, if you're in a role where you can make a decision and now you've heard from us, you should go back to your superintendent and say hey, I think we should check out the Future Ready together. Bring your superintendent with you to this, so you're not doing this alone. He had to sign off. He came with me for the first assignment.
When you do professional development, professional learning for your teachers, how much is the instructional technology part an aspect of that professional learning for your teachers? How are you building capacity with your teachers to fulfill your vision?
Yeah, so, and you can probably answer this. Yeah, Brian's in the back as well, so he can chime in if I'm missing anything. But in the beginning, I would say we've had an evolution of our PD. In the beginning, it was tech tips, we called them, and we've really moved away from that. Rather than doing this whole idea of let me just throw a couple tools your way, we're really taking a step back because people have bought into the technology. We don't have to convince you. Have that 10% that's always going to be there, and that's okay. But those people that are moving with us, we're trying to evolve it from don't just go use this Pear Deck or this video. We're tying back to does anyone remember Weston Keshnick from last year in Bold School? That is what we're really tapping into right now, alongside with Hattie. John Hattie has research around best practice and the Hattie strategies. I'm going to try to break away and show you something, but we always tie back to what's your outcome. So every technology presentation that we're giving now is not so much a tech tip, it's what are you trying to accomplish in teaching and learning. And I'm going to try to show you that because I think, here it is. That's our framework now. So Dr. Garvin, as she presents to her principals, as we present to, this is it. So we always go back to what's our outcome, what's our strategy, and what tools. And the tools, blended learning is a tool, or a phrase that we're using a lot right now. We're trying not to push the tech so much, because I think for a while we were called the tech pushers because our technology vision was on center stage. But now we're trying to put teaching and learning back on the stage. Does that help? Okay.
I would think too, I'm just gonna share, kind of a scenario that brought this to light that might also help your question with how to get your district if you don't have the change in leadership. I think that's what's critically important is also having all of the leaders of different departments understand their role in supporting teaching and learning. So for Lindsay's story about the tech, first it was introducing everybody to the tools and getting because you had your, the digital natives were coming in, or the people who were like, gadget lovers were kind of pushing it, which is what we were doing back then, but nobody knew how to really put it together. What I think is most important now is, and this is the best example, our director of facilities just had to put in as part of the plan a bunch of ceiling mounted projectors in all of our gyms across the elementary level. And it involved a lot of work, and sometimes the facilities director doesn't necessarily understand if it's a nice to have or a need to have, or the why behind why this request was being made. And the head of finance might not understand why we're spending this kind of money to put these things in place. So when we have our elementary principals meetings, every third meeting we have at one of our schools, and we do something called Eye on Instruction, where we all go out for 20 minutes and observe classrooms across that particular school, do some we have a checklist of observation look-fors that we use when we go into those rooms, and we come back and we give those teachers feedback, but we go out in teams. Well, Robert, our head of facilities, went to a gym to watch first graders, I think it was, in the gym, and the teacher using the new technology that his team had to put in place that he might not have understood, and came back and talked and reported out in our cabinet meeting just kind of the revelation that it was for him to understand the work that they were doing and how it turned around and impacted kids and learning. And he said, my vision of PE was, you were doing drills in a classroom, somebody was blowing a whistle, you were running around, and he's like, to see that they were doing something like, differentiated stations in the room, and she was teaching from a PowerPoint. That was his big revelation. Was that she was teaching from a PowerPoint in gym, and then he understood how it all went into play. And it was kind of for us that whole, it's another way to move it forward, because the people need to see, that what's best for kids. We're always saying that in front of people, but until you're putting them in front of what's best for kids, they're not ready to walk it with you. So it was a huge difference maker for us.
And just to close with, I was just going to say for staff development, I was the technology staff developer for the district, and my first hire was Lindsay as the supervisor of staff development, and her first hire was Brian, so it was always part of the plan to have an education-centric vision for our department. There's one more question.
Yes, right there.
The local economy, is this all leading to jobs and career makers? Is that your vision?
Well, we were talking about
Are you talking about like
Career
pathways?
pathways, or
Yeah, so that's huge.
Something we talk about a lot about, or we try to talk about, is if we're going to get a vision in place, then how is that going to lead to like majors that they can within the local.
Yeah.
Like we're not Erie County, we're just trying to stay local. So we have schools in place in higher ed schools. So a lot of our students are not leaving, they're staying. So we're trying to move our conversation to start with, where will they go to get the majors they need, the training they need, so they can stay the major out of high school and actually finish up and actually get it done.
That's great, because I think with that makes me think of as our STEAM committee. We talk about our STEAM courses and things like that, but we have coordinators for those, right? So they don't fall in an administrative role. So that's another piece of this puzzle that we talk about administrators, we talk about teachers, but one thing that we sometimes forget to talk about is our coordinators. And so in that case, our coordinators are being brought into the conversation, and as they're asking for software and programs, we say, what are you trying to get to? So we're having a lot of even K-12 conversations that we've never even had before, where it was just high school used to talk to high school, middle school talk to middle school, elementary. And with doing this with the vision, we realized there was a lot of gaps that were leading to missed opportunities like you're talking about. And I think we're not there yet, but pathways are coming up. And because of these cross conversations between departments and grades,
maybe you can even talk about that more.
I think we just start to use it when we do our state mandated reports too. So like the comprehensive plan, our K-12 guidance plan, the 339 plan, all of that then ties into all of this and becomes part of the next iteration of refining what we need to do as those strategic initiatives, but still under those same overarching objectives. But it's absolutely, we just presented to curriculum committee on that the other night. Yeah.
Thank you. I kept you to the end, but thank you for staying, and we can still be available for questions if you need any answer. Thank you.
Feel free to take a business card and tasty cakes.
And more tasty cakes.
Yeah, you can take them all.
I don't want to carry them home. Please
I
take
have a
them.
box you can have.
We do not want to bring these home.
No.
Thanks, guys, so much.
Thank you.
Great presentation, thank you for sharing.
Thanks for coming, man.
This case is just the literal icing on top.
Hey.
Alright, I want to marry your entire team. This was so good. So, first of all,
Was that helpful? Did that help you a little bit more than yesterday? Okay. Oh, come over, yeah.
no, I meant, that was interesting to hear there was a huge
Okay. It's a full, like, that's great. It's a force.
Okay. Awesome. Okay. Super. Thank you. Absolutely. Do you have a business card too, or is yours the one? I didn't bring mine.
Yeah.
That doesn't much.
I know, so one more time.
I know.
Great. Okay. Yeah. Good plan. Yeah. Well, thank you.
I just started.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, they realize like,
They get it. Yeah.
and it's not just, okay, I mean, it's a great culture. Telling people, that's good to know that you're
Right.
I found this, I like to use it. Now it's about empowering them. That's what it is. That's what it is. Let's advise them, we're trying to save you. Here's why that's important. If it's your data and you just want to click on the agreement, that's right. So that's like step one. This is because we say we put like outcomes for kids, achievement gaps, whatever your plan is.
Okay. Super. Thank you so much.
Again, it's nice to
Thank you. You as well. Thank you. Thanks.
you're fighting what we're doing.
Hi, how are you? I'm good, how are you? We were thinking about actually, you're not the first person. IT director. Okay. Informal. Yeah. I've been pushing this. We're going to talk about like, not to tell you and I can be the one just for doing it, for one, things like that. Short, just something like that.
For a long time, Congress said a lot of bells and whistles. So now we're at the point where we know we need a vision.
So
you had already done Microsoft route for,
the other thing, okay, future start off with the sharing process of products that we use the Wednesday way.
I think that's the key, because it's all the parts of the other one to make it work. The hard part is, how do you do it?
Okay, so 8 years ago, you're
10, 12, yeah. You don't know how to launch that out.
Okay.
Yeah, we've been doing it. Yeah, we see.
Okay.
I wonder, because
That's why
I just had this conversation with somebody recently, who's going to switch.
How do you market your
That's where
tech?
the whole tool book will be helpful to you. I guess the best book if candidates, there's teachers who say I know about because the highest effect size is direct instruction, but it's how we do direct instruction. The tools that you use that will enhance it and only solidify it. So it then becomes the blended learning. And you're not pushing tech, you're pushing best practice. And we're like putting out these specs that say what's the effect size of like how using it. It's old school. Yeah, he's great. He's really good. And that kind of was like a little like ding for us, like changed a lot, of our opinions again. We have people who are using this movement, that's the tool for everybody.
Yeah, I don't want that much choice.
Thank much.
Thank you, this is great.
Thank you so much.
I have a girl.
From the boat office. Yeah, that's
So
right.
I have a
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
I took one from my friend too. No, I'm totally joking, but like, that's perfect. Thank you. So
It's a Philly thing.
Oh, okay.
Where we are.
Yeah. Well, and it was funny because we were at a rest stop.
It's our air